Welcome to my channel Daily Bulletin News. Abigail reveals her true identity to Chad, as well as her mother's, plus, Kristen offers Xander the serum for a price. In Paris, Steve knocks Mark out before he can shoot Chad. Chad asks what is happening, and Steve says, "This woman is not Abigail." Steve calls her an imposter, and reveals Kayla reran the DNA test and this woman is not his wife. Abigail checks on her brother, and Steve tells Chad that Mark falsified the DNA results. Chad asks Abby if this is true, but can see by her face it is. She cries that she's not Abigail. Chad can't believe this and that Abigail is really dead. He asks the woman if Mark is her boyfriend. She explains that he is her brother. Steve thinks it's time to bring in the police, but Chad wants answers. Chad drags the woman into another room and yells at her to start talking. He asks why she's pretending to be his dead wife. She needs him to know this wasn't her idea, and this was Clyde's plan. Chad asks why Clyde would do this. She cries she doesn't know, and she thinks he wanted him to be tormented, plus he wanted his money. Chad can't believe she pretended to be a dead woman for money and yells she doesn't even care about him. She cries she doesn't expect him to believe her, but she really does have feelings for him. Chad doesn't believe that, but she insists she cares about him and her intent wasn't malicious. She hated lying to him and it got more difficult the longer it went on as she began to fall in love with him. She knows he doesn't need to hear this, but it is true. Chad asks how she knew his and Abby's wedding vows. She admits she snooped through a box of mementos in the attic and found Abigail's vows written down. He calls her twisted and screwed up for making him feel this way. He yells if she cared for him, she would have told him the truth before he thought he had the love of his life back and before her brother arrived to kill him. She had no idea Mark was coming to kill him, and she stepped in front of him to stop him. She was supposed to marry him and transfer his money to Clyde, and that was it. Chad asks how she was going to explain when he found out his assets were gone. She admits she was meant to disappear. He assumes her brother or Clyde decided it would be easier for her if he was dead. She swears she didn't know about that part of the plan. Chad admits he knew in his guts that something was off, and he thinks he believed in her because he so desperately wanted this to be true. He wanted to believe Abigail had come back to him and his kids. For the first time since Abby's death, he wasn't in pain. Now, he must mourn her over again. He says when Abigail's parents find out, they will be in hell. He thanks God he didn't tell his kids about her. The woman explains that's why she avoided seeing them and why she wanted them to come to Paris. She swears she and Mark didn't want to do this, but Clyde forced them to. She explains that Clyde told them if they didn't do what he wanted, then he'd kill their mother. She says his men have been holding her hostage, and if they don't get Clyde the money, she'll be executed. Chad asks how he knows it's not just another lie. She tells him that she doesn't expect him to believe her. He says he doesn't even know who she is. She tells him that she's Kat, short for Katerina, and she was named after her mom. Chad doesn't know if she's telling the truth, and he doesn't care, but he does know that she and her brother committed a cruel fraud against anyone who has ever loved Abby. He says that he will make her pay, and he promises it. Back in the other room, Steve ties a still unconscious Mark up in a chair. JJ arrives and asks what his uncle Steve is doing here and what is going on with this guy who is a doctor from Salem. Steve says this man tried to kill Chad and is the brother of the woman pretending to be Abigail. JJ realizes his mom was right all along, and he dreads having to tell his dad the truth. Steve thinks they should get more details about what is going on before they call Jack. Steve believes Clyde Weston is somehow involved. Mark finally regains consciousness, and Steve tells him that they know the truth. His sister is hashing things out with Chad as they speak. At the DeMera mansion, Kristen is on the phone with Mr. Shin discussing Abigail's resurrection and says he and the board have given her a lot to think about. She hangs up and walks into the living room where Xander is standing. She tells him she wasn't expecting him, and she's not giving him the serum with Brady behind bars. Xander informs her that Brady is free and the real culprit, his mother, has been arrested. He tells her what happened and can't believe she hasn't read about it in the paper. She says she just got back from a board meeting in Chicago. Xander lets her know that her brother didn't want to release Brady, and he and Sarah convinced him to. He asks for the serum, but Kristen needs to confirm this first. She says if Brady is free, then she should be able to get him on the phone. At the Salem PD, Brady is released and finds Sarah waiting for him. She is glad he is free, and that the right person is behind bars, but she has something to say to him. They decide to go into the conference room, but Brady gets a call from Kristen. He takes it and confirms he's out and headed home soon. She asks him to stop by and see Rachel. She also asks how his release came about. After the call, Brady and Sarah talk. Sarah feels terrible for blaming him for her accident for months. Brady says he thought he was guilty too, thanks to Fiona. Sarah says she was the one who made the statement to the police about him, and if he never forgives her, she'd understand. Brady forgives her, and he has to learn to forgive himself for being weak and relapsing, which allowed Fiona to frame him. Sarah says he's a good man and had the sense not to drive that night, so give himself credit for that. He refuses, and asks Sarah why she named him as the driver. Was she confused? Sarah admits she lied. Brady understands she wanted him to pay, but he's surprised she'd lie to make it happen. Sarah tells him she didn't lie to punish him. He has had time to think and theorizes she was trying to protect Xander and keep him from killing him. He goes over the events of the night he was arrested and believes she lied to the cops to keep Xander from committing murder. Sarah fights back tears, and Brady says she doesn't have to say anything, as he can tell he's right. He doesn't blame Xander for wanting to get payback, and she thought it was best that a guilty man went to prison instead of her child's father. She thanks him. He knows she tried to do the right thing and recant her statement. Sarah says she did, but she also admits in part that it was because there is an experimental serum that could help her walk again, and they were offered it if she and Xander dropped the charges against him. Brady can guess who offered them this deal. Back at the mansion, Kristen lets Xander know she spoke with Brady and he has been released. However, she learned that Eric was the one who figured out that Brady was innocent, and neither he nor Sarah did anything to help Brady. She says she's going to keep the serum. Xander reminds her that he and Sarah convinced EJ to release Brady. Kristen says he would have had to drop the charges eventually. She tells him, fortunately, that she is feeling generous and will give him the serum for something in return. She wants Titan. Xander says she can't expect him to hand over $1 billion company, and why does she want his company when she has her own? Kristen wants to merge Titan and Demera, which will make her unstoppable. She explains the Demera board is not happy with the revenue stream and projections and is losing confidence in her. She says if she had Titan, she'd regain their trust, making her the most successful CEO Demera has ever had. Xander informs her that he won't give her his father's company. Xander says she doesn't need Titan, as she has the serum to make a fortune off of. Kristen says to get the serum on the market will take years, and before then one of her brothers could take over the company. He still refuses to hand his father's company over to his greatest enemy's daughter. She calls it a small price to help Sarah. Later, Brady stops by as Kristen is working. She runs into his arms and is so happy to see him. Brady tells her that Sarah told him about the deal she made with her and asks if she's still going to give her the serum. Kristen says she is, and she and Xander have made arrangements. Xander returns home to Sarah. She says she talked to Brady, and he figured out why she lied and is letting it go. She asks how it went with Kristen. Xander says Kristen will give them the serum, but she wants his family legacy in return. At the hospital, Marlena chats with Kayla and tells her that Brady is getting out of jail. Kayla is happy for her but is distracted by her phone. She explains that Steve is in Paris trying to stop Chad from marrying Abigail, who isn't Abigail after all, and that she's waiting to hear from him. Kayla fills her in on the latest developments involving Mark and the DNA tests. Their talk turns back to Brady, and Marlena is glad he's free and it has nothing to do with Kristen, who is still trying to get him back. Kayla assumes John is thrilled, and Marlena confirms he is. She says John always believed there was more to what happened. He wishes he could be here, but he's with his dad at an old family farm. They return to the woman posing as Abigail. They recall John and Steve finding her, and Kayla hopes Steve will get some answers from her. Marlena finds it all so strange. One moment John was putting flowers on Katharina's grave in Italy, the next he wakes up hostage in Poplar Bluff. Kayla knows John never got the closure with Katharina that he needed. Marlena says he can't forgive himself for taking a life. Kayla feels it's sad, and Marlena thinks Katharina's death will always haunt John. Stay tuned and subscribe the channel.